Good evening, everybody. Good morning to some of you. In today's webinar, we are here with Jennifer Tharp. She's a PMI fellow, and this webinar will be on the topic of things I learned the hard way, what boards really need from project managers. So our webinar is going to start at 18 o'clock. I'm going to present how it's going to be conducted, and Jennifer will start at in 10 minutes or so, and at the end there will be room for questions and of course the PDU code and the closure. Of course, I'm encouraging you to ask for a question during the webinar, or if you're not comfortable writing it in the chat. The suggested conduct guidelines is that you have to mute your microphone during this session. Please use your full name for us to identify for you for the PDUs. Feel free to turn your video on, use the chat, and of course this session is going to be recorded.
Well, yeah, you're not sharing any slides in the moment.
Really?
You are? No, she is.
Yeah, I see them.
I see the map of Germany with the
Yes.
location of Darmstadt in the arrow.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. My fault, sorry.
Okay.
I hope my mouth.
Yeah. So the PMI Germany chapter at glance. Our PMI Germany has merged from 3 to 4 chapters in 2020. The PMI Frankfurt chapter was the first ever chapter in Europe. It was established in 1988. The scale is of 5 regions, 25 local groups. The membership is approximately 11,000 PMI members in Germany, including a multinational community of about 5,000 members from 40 plus countries. There are plus 150 dedicated individuals to this network. And as the arrow is pointing, here is our local group, Darmstadt. Our local group Darmstadt is an English-speaking community with 7 volunteers from 6 different countries. Per month, we have 2 online events, which has generated over 3,300 participants since the inception. We have an average of 35 attendees, 100 plus attendees participated plus 10 times. And we have one face-to-face roundtable per month. And we have also a LinkedIn group with 520 plus members. I'm encouraging you to join us. It's free and it's valuable. And now let me introduce you to our speaker, Jennifer Tharp. She's a PMP, a PMI fellow. Jennifer Tharp is a highly experienced project manager and governance leader with a long track record of global influence in the profession. She has 25 years of strategic leadership experience. She's the chair of the board of directors, project management, Mastodon Consulting, project management professional PMP, as I said before, and longtime PMI volunteer, recognized for governance consulting, strategic change, and risk management across industries. She's a co-author of book Sustainability Integration for Effective Project Management, Bridging Sustainable Practice with Project Execution. Extensive experience advising organizations, including technology firms, government entities, and NGOs. So, Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that really warm and lovely introduction. I really appreciate it. I would like to say good morning from San Francisco. Obviously, for you guys, it's not necessarily good morning. It's more good evening. But hello and welcome. I'm really happy to be here. And I'm very excited to be a part of this session for you today. I've titled this talk, Things I Learned the Hard Way. This is a very unusual one for me because I'm used to normally describing things like some of the research that I've done and some of the areas that I'm focused on, where this has been a little bit more challenging for me because it's more reflective. It's more, what are the things that I've learned? What are the things that maybe I can share with other people from my learning? So it's been a little bit of an adventure. Got a little bit of an echo, so hopefully we'll resolve that. So my experience is we spend our entire careers being rewarded for having all the answers as project managers. We get promoted because we can control the variables, hit the deadlines, and deliver the scope. But here's the brutal truth that I learned when I moved from being a project manager to becoming a board chair. Sometimes the instincts that got you to the top are the exact same things that will cause you to fail once you get there. In the boardroom, control is an illusion. You're no longer managing tasks. You're governing a system where the most dangerous risks are the ones that you cannot see on a dashboard. Leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about navigating a world where the data is always incomplete. The politics are often invisible, and control is an illusion. Today, we're going to talk about how to survive that shift. So here's a picture of one of my favorite places on the planet. I haven't had a chance to visit it yet. I really would love to. This is Bell Works, which is part of Bell Labs, Bell Laboratories, back in 1962 in New Jersey. Bell Labs was a research and development arm of a big telecommunications company in the United States. Bell Labs was an amazing place, one of those places that you read about, and the more you read about it, the more excited you get, and the more you wish you could have been a part of it. Innovations from Bell Labs included radio astronomy, the invention of the transistor, the invention of the laser, the photovoltaic cell, the Unix operating system, programming languages such as A, B, C, and C++. There were 11 Nobel Prizes and 5 Turing Awards that have been awarded for work that came out of Bell Labs. So it was a pretty magical place, pretty exciting stuff. So here's a guy who worked at Bell Labs. His name is Richard Hamming. He was a mathematician at Bell Labs. Think about that for a second. I love the idea of a corporation having a mathematics research department. We've moved so far away from that. When he worked there, he would go and have lunch with the people in the mathematics department. And then he very quickly got bored with that because he knows the issues that the mathematics department were dealing with. He knows the problems that they were dealing with. He wanted to find out, like, what else is going on here? So he realized he wasn't learning anything. So he started going around to other tables in the dining room where other departments were having lunch. And he would sit down and bother them to find out, like, what do you got going on? So he didn't know much about physics. He didn't know much about chemistry. So he sat down at the chemistry table and he says, so what are the most important problems going on in chemistry right now? What are the most important things, the things that everybody is focused on? So everybody gets all excited and they're talking about these very difficult problems in chemistry, problems that no one knows how to solve and that everyone has some theories about, but nobody really knows what to do with. Very exciting stuff. Then a week later, he asked everybody, so what projects are you working on? Well, everybody likes talking about their projects. Oh, the politics of this are insane, but I really like the people that I work with. Here are the details that I'm working through. Here's the thing my boss assigned me. It's pretty interesting. I get to work with these people. It's pretty cool, you know, blah, 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 blah. A week later, he asked them, so you've told me about the most interesting problems in your field, but you're not working on those problems. If what you are doing is not solving one of the most important problems, and you don't think that it's going to lead to something important, why are you even here working on it? After that, the chemistry table asked him to go find someplace else to have lunch. So it's an important thing to think about. Like, if what you're doing is not important, why are you working on it? I read that story probably 30 years ago, but I still think about it all the time. As project managers, we are the architects of the future. Every project we lead, introduces a change that ripples through our organizations, our communities, and the global culture. But we have to focus on so many details to manage a project well that we sometimes forget that we're introducing something new into the world, something that impacts people's lives. So I like this photograph because it's very interesting. This is what that Bell Labs looked like 40 years later. 2 million square feet of research and innovation, completely abandoned, completely left behind. But there's a good story. Here's what it looks like today. Bell Labs is no longer there, but people with a vision have given it a new life. In fact, this building might look a little bit familiar if you're a fan of the television show Severance. This is actually where they filmed Lumen Industries, the very evil corporation. So it's now a going concern and offices and apartments and lots of things. So it's nice that it's still continuing forward. So let me take you back a little bit in my history. It's 2007. I'm speaking at PMI's conference in Hong Kong. There was another speaker there, and what he said changed the trajectory of my life. Here he is, not at PMI, but at the World Economic Forum. His name is Chandra Nair. He is with the Global Institute for Tomorrow. He said he was speaking to a room filled with project managers, filled with very serious people in very serious suits. And he said that project managers don't just deliver on time and on budget, but they need to take full ownership of the projects that they're managing. You're leading a project. You're introducing a product or service or process into the world. The outputs of your project are going to have an impact on your organization, on your community, and on your culture. If your project results in a stream being polluted, that's your fault. If a company you're subcontracting with is mistreating its workers, that's also your fault. This blew my mind. Now, today, this is something that we talk about a lot, but back then, this was new. Everyone at this point was saying, you are assigned a project. It's your job to deliver it to the best of your ability. And what happens outside of that is not your concern. You are a task manager, and this is what you do. This person was talking about the entire strategic context and the downstream implications of what we do. This was amazing to me. I hadn't considered it. And I began dedicating a lot of time at this point, time and energy, thinking about the importance of weaving sustainability into the projects that we do. I started speaking and writing about how we can think about the long-term impacts of the projects that we undertake. I ended up committing years of my life to this, writing a book and getting involved with having sustainability reflected in the PMBOK and our partnership with Green Project Management. So when we think about our life's work, when we look back on it, your life is in many ways the sum of all of your projects. What is your passion? What do you care about? What sets you on fire? What are the things that are central to you as a person that you should be focused on and you should be really paying attention to in your world? Is it driverless cars like we have in San Francisco? Or is it flying cars? Is it going off into space? What are the projects of the future that really get you excited and really make you think about the potential that's available to us going forward? So let's think about our friends at the chemistry table. What are some of the most interesting projects going on right now? So right here on this slide, I've listed some of the projects that I'm following that I think are important and interesting and that I'd like to be involved in. Now it's your turn. I'd like you to write in the chat some ideas of some of the projects that you've been reading about that have captured your heart and your head. Could be Artemis, program for space exploration. I like CRISPR for gene editing and its potential for changing the way that illnesses are treated. AI and drug discovery, very similar. The floating tunnels of Norway, and the world's largest telescope that they're building in Chile, and all of the interesting projects that they're building in Saudi Arabia. So those are the ones that I think are the coolest projects. But I'm sure there's some projects that you're following in terms of either new technologies or new exploration. What are projects that could make a difference that you think would be super fun to work on? I'd like to invite you to enter into the chat some of the projects that kind of have you on fire and have you excited. So I'm going to give you a second to do that real quick.
So at the moment, Thomas commented Stuttgart 21 railway station. This is an ongoing project. Yeah. Christopher Bante, first vaccines against COVID, BioNTech. The Green Wall Sub-Sahara. This is very interesting. Very interesting.
Excellent. I would also love to be involved in putting on a big event. Like we're going to be having the World Cup coming up here in the United States and other parts of North America. I think something like that would be a lot of fun. I would also love like Eurovision. Oh, yeah. A big event like that would be so much fun to be involved in as a project manager. Anything else come up?
Yes, from Robin van den Berg, Great Green Wall Initiative, restore 100 million hectares of degraded land across the Sahel region. Then
Ooh.
Peter Pedersen said definitely the space exploration projects, but I'm fascinated by the work being done with the quantum computing. I wrote several papers on quantum computing while working on my master's degree. And then we have Joanna Frintu, use of AI and robots in agriculture, seeding drone and weeding robot. All of them sounds fantastic to me, by the way.
I agree. There's a bunch that I hadn't heard of that like I'm gonna need to like research after this presentation. So many interesting projects.
Yeah.
That's
oh,
great.
And there is another one from Adelaide Adayemi. I hope I'm pronouncing your name and surname right. Wireless power transmission. This is also very cool.
Oh, that is fascinating. Excellent. That would certainly transform my life here in Silicon Valley.
Well, I mentioned Stuttgart 21 because it's a project under stress. So it's already taking 3 times the amount of years it should have taken, and it's a lot of budgets. But I found it really interesting because they they refuse to give an end date, and maybe they should have done this in the beginning. Just work on it and develop something and make progress. But so if you give an end date, you fail automatically with these large initiatives. But if you don't give an end date, maybe you are pressured to it. But if you don't give an end date, you are removing this threat.
I think that's a really important point, Thomas. I mean, it makes me think of here in California, we're very far behind the rest of the world when it comes to high-speed rail. But we've been trying to do a high-speed rail project, and every single time they set expectations by coming up with a date or a location. And when those expectations are disappointed, it really loses traction in the project. So yeah, to try to, how do you manage the stakeholders in those cases? That's a challenging project. Oh.
Berlin, there is also a comment on Berlin Airport from
We all love that one. So Now I want to invite you to expand our minds a little bit further. I want you to think about a slightly different question. What are the problems that are really important, really close to your heart, that you don't think that anybody is working on, or if they are working on, maybe they're not making significant progress? Not the most important problem in your field, perhaps, but what are the biggest problems in your community where you live? Think of all the projects that need to be done. Where should be your next project? What is affecting your community? What would you love to take on, even though you're not sure that you or anyone else could actually do anything about it? In my town of San Francisco, which is a beautiful place, we have a very well-known problem with people who can't afford homes who live on the street. That's a problem I don't know how to fix. I've been thinking about for 40 years, but if I get involved with my skills as a project manager, maybe I could make a real difference. I've also spent a lot of time in Venice, and I took this photo of the flooding that happens there 100 times a year. It's quite beautiful, but it's also quite damaging. I love Venice, and I'd like to be on a project to figure out how to manage this problem better. Maybe you worry about the direction that your government is going in. I know I do. Everything that we could do is a project. Think about the things that you care about every single day, which affect you and your family. As a project manager, you have this incredible gift, the gift to make dreams a reality. What is the world that you want to see? What is the world that you want to create? Here, I'd like to invite you again to put something into the comments. If you could fix a problem in your community, in your life, with the power of project management, what would it be? You can always look at the Sustainable Development Goals to think about these things. There's certainly a lot of really great ideas there. What is that project that you should be working on? Maybe it's a project that you know people that are working on and you'd like to get involved, or maybe you don't know if anyone is working seriously on it. You're a project manager. You have that superpower to make dreams a reality. So I ask you the Hamming question. If the project on your desk right now isn't aiming higher, if it's not solving an important problem, why are you working on it? Let's all add in the comments what you think that most important problem is that you would like to contribute to. These are not just problems, they're opportunities. The world has a lot of strong project managers to close those gaps. And I bet if you put something in the comments, you're going to find a partner here who would like to work on it with you. So again, I'd like to invite you to put something into the comments about projects that you're thinking about, problems that you'd like to see addressed in your community. And sure, many of us have work that we do because we need to pay the bills. That's mostly why we work. That maybe it's not solving the world's greatest problems, and it can be hard to see a path towards working on those problems. But remember Dr. Hamming's words, if you don't work on important problems, it's unlikely you're going to do important work. I can still do my day job and contribute maybe with a nonprofit or other volunteer work to some of the most important problems in my heart and in my community, using much needed project management capabilities to help drive meaningful change. Anyone can hold a protest sign or stuff envelopes, but what are the things that only you can do with your talents as a project manager? Let's talk about some of those great problems and projects you're thinking about. So did anybody enter some comments here?
Yes.
Some ideas?
Yes.
Oh, good. Let's talk.
The first comment is from Thomas. Reduce the hardships of homeless people, single moms. And then we have from Joanna Frintu, involve elderly people in community. This is also very important.
Yes.
I would like to add to be more empathetic and maybe find a different approach to people who have mental disabilities.
Ah, that's good.
El Dauer create affordable houses and apartments. This is also very important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Certainly make an impact where I'm living.
Ioana Frintu, one more time, find solutions for all the people who are getting fired due to disruptions in the industry. This is actually a very hot topic right now.
Yes. It's a very hot topic in my house where I don't have a job right now. So yes, absolutely.
Lopez Christian added a comment to Ioana. I was thinking about something I like. Terry Hoffman commented the most important military IT problems were interoperability, deployment speed, and operational reliability. If a project did not improve readiness or decision speed, it did not matter. That lesson reshaped how I lead and why I'm pursuing a PMP.
Ah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move in a slightly different direction, a new exercise, and this is going to require you to have a piece of paper and a pen in front of you, or pencil is fine, or a crayon, a marker, whatever you have. So I'm going to ask you to grab a piece of paper real quick, and this is not, sit and watch me exercise. This is a really grab a piece of paper and a pen exercise. So grab a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to draw a circle, a big one, in the middle of your paper. Okay? Give you a second to grab paper and pen. Some of you have some right in front of you, some of you don't. Okay. Gonna assume you now have a piece of paper and a pen. I want you to come up with a list of 4 to 8 things that are important to you in your life. We could all come up with a list of like 25 things, but we need to just kind of like focusing, what are the things that are the most important in my life, the things that bring me joy, the things that make my life valuable. What are the things that are most important to me in my life? I've listed a few that could be things to consider. So write down on your piece of paper things like career, relationship with my partner, my family, having enough money to do what I need to, friends and making time for them, service to my community, my spirituality, my health, both physical and mental. So I'm going to give you a minute to write those down and think about what are the things that are most important to you in your life. And it can be completely different from this. It could be working on my music. It could be working on my art. It could be rebuilding my relationship with my son. Whatever it is that is really important to you in your life. So I'm going to give you a minute longer to think about that and come up with a draft for that. You don't need to share them or put them in the comments. Just write them down on your piece of paper. This is just for you. Okay, I'm going to assume we're most of the way there. So then we're going to break up that circle that we drew, and we're going to put it into areas, divided up into areas that represent the relative importance in your life. What is the most important to you? What is the least important to you? Right now, as we described, I'm looking for work, so career is pretty important to me. So that's kind of the biggest chunk. And money comes a little bit after that, for a similar reason. But then I look and it's like, well, my health is really important, family and friends, learning, service, fun. These are the areas that I looked at myself and what was really important to me and what I wanted to focus on and how I broke up my circle. So take a second to divide up your circle with the categories that you've listed And you're not going to get it perfect. We don't have to look for, 23.5%. I know you guys are Germans, but we can keep it just kind of general of this is the most important, and then these are the areas that I need to focus on. I'll give you another minute to do that. Be sure to sing out if I'm going a little bit too fast, if you need a little bit more time. And don't judge me for my choices. Okay. I'll go ahead and move on. Now I want you to draw another circle. You should already have a pen and paper. Either next to your first circle, or if you made a big circle like I generally do, maybe on another piece of paper. So I want you to draw another circle. And then using those same categories, let's create sections for how much time you actually spend on each area per week in your waking hours. Some of you are laughing because you know that things are out of balance without even drawing them. But let's draw out the sections and compare. So you can see I'm spending, if you're going to judge me, you can see I'm spending a decent amount of time thinking about my career, but I'm also trying to balance that out, the stress of that out, by focusing a little bit more on having fun with my life. That might also be because I don't have a career. Okay, so draw out the second circle to show how much time in your waking hours, so don't count sleep, that's a third of your circle. Not counting sleep, how much of your time do you think you spend on each of these areas? Give you a couple more minutes. Okay. So when I look at both of these circles for myself side by side, well, I can see why maybe I'm not that happy. I'm not spending my time on things that are important to me. I'm spending some time on things that are important to me, but it's out of balance, right? I also realized that I would need to add a new section on reading news on the internet, which is not one of my priorities, but is somehow where I seem to spend most of my time. It's not healthy. So maybe spirituality is very important to you, a quarter of your circle, but you only spend an hour a week working on your spirituality. How can you spend more time to make that align with your values? Where can you take time from? A good thing for you, you're a project manager. You know how to break a task down and make changes to ensure that your life meets your values. You won't achieve what it is that you want to achieve in your life until you figure out the right balance between what is important to you and how you spend your time. I looked at mine last week while I was preparing for this talk, and I realized that I'm not spending as much time with my family as I'd like. So right away, I booked a flight to go visit my sister that I haven't seen in a couple of years. So we have within our capability to manage these things. I want to take a second to get some feedback from you to see what your thoughts are of this exercise, if you learned anything or if you have any thoughts about this exercise. Is there anything in the comments? We're all keeping it to ourselves.
Yeah, Sandra Jeffers said very insightful, super insightful. Also said Lopez Christian.
Yeah, I would highly recommend doing this exercise, and I'll go into some reasons why I think it's useful, not just for your life, but for other aspects as well.
We have another comment from Peter Peterson. My reality doesn't quite match up with my values. Certainly something to ponder on. And then Martin Bertram commented, "It is what you think, how you spend your time. Do others share your view?" Joanna Frintus commented, "It became painfully clear that I'm not focusing on the right stuff."
Yeah, it's funny because I learned this exercise a long time ago, but I do it probably about once every 5 to 10 years, and it's always revealing because I always think, oh, this is something that I know, but until you actually do the exercise, you don't realize, oh, these are the ways that I'm out of balance, and this is what I need to do to solve it. Yeah.
I would also agree with Lopez Christian. He commented, "I guess we all realize this and have to make adjustments."
Yeah, I think that's fair. So this is a good exercise to do if you want to create a New Year's resolution, or if you want to live your life according to your principles. But I bet you didn't know that it's also a good exercise to use in other parts of your life. When I was chair of the PMI board, I thought, what are the things that are the most important to us? What are the things that PMI should be focused on? What are the things that the board should be focused on? So I did this pie chart exercise with the board of directors. We came up together with a pie chart of what's important for us to focus on. And then we held up our pie chart of our priorities against our board meeting agenda, that we're spending 2 hours on this, and then at 10 o'clock, we're going to go do this. And so we could see specifically how much time we were spending in each of the categories. And it turns out, surprise, our priorities did not match how we were spending our time. We were spending most of our time on performance issues. We thought, maybe we don't need to spend 2 more hours working on financial stuff, but need to add an hour to talk about our culture and innovation, because if we don't work on those things that are important to you, they're not going to get better. So we all know that we create the world that we spend time on. We can say that these things are important to us. We can say that our culture is important to us, but if we never work on it, then guess what? Our culture isn't really that important to us. So we need to create that world that we spend time on. So I'm going to ask you to do this one more time. Hopefully you have more paper. So I want you to draw one more circle. And in the same way that we extended this to our life, and I extended this to the PMI board, you can extend this to concept to how you manage your projects. So if we look at a project pie, I've seen countless projects where teams say stakeholder engagement is critical, but they spend 90% of their time on technical delivery and then wonder why adoption is failing. Like the values that are important in your life, the principles that you use are going to differ from project to project. So your project pie, your values pie, is not going to be the same for every single project or for every single company. Here are some possibilities to think about. I listed some areas that might be part of your project pie. So stakeholder management, planning and strategic thinking, risk and issue management, supporting my team. Boy, that's the one I always forget to do, and it's so important. Monitoring, quality and standards, sustainability considerations, and learning and improvement. Those are just some ideas. You all know the PMBOK, you all know, the knowledge areas and stuff. So, think about the areas that might be the most important to your project. So when you're creating your first pie, your value pie, what this project needs, given the project's context, the maturity and goals, where should your attention be focused? This requires an honest assessment of, is this a project where stakeholder resistance is the main risk? So that's going to be a bigger slice. Or is this project technically complex with high quality requirements, big risk for getting things wrong? Well, then that would be a bigger slice of your pie. Or are we building something that's going to be in operation for 20 years? Well, then sustainability is going to be a bigger part of your pie. So when you think about like what are your values are, try and figure that out contextually based on what's necessary for the project and what your own experience is for what makes a project successful. So when you figure out your values and then look at your time. So for your second pie, where your time actually goes, this one is the painful one. You want to look at a typical week or two of your project, and you need to be brutally honest. Where is your time actually going? How much of it is like firefighting that takes into the strategic time? How much of it is meetings that don't advance stakeholder engagement? How much of it is time that's spent on things that are urgent versus important? So take a look at those two elements and try and figure out like, oh, where am I getting this wrong? So this is an exercise that honestly is going to take a little bit longer than we have today because you need to spend some time looking probably at your project charter and any business case docs in order to figure out what the values are, as well as the values of your own organization to kind of build that pie out well. And I would also recommend maybe meeting with your team to talk about what they think should be part of this pie as well. So you're going to want to spend some more time than we have here today to work through this and to talk with your team about your findings. But then thinking about your projects just at a high level, is there anything that jumps out at you as an opportunity or a discovery that about where maybe you need to shift priorities, where you need to shift your time? And I just wanted to see if there was any feedback on that just from a high level. You're all managing your projects very effectively according to your values and principles. Any comments?
So far, not.
That's okay. It's something that we need to reflect on and think about. So it's okay. I've got good news for you. There's no more circles. Yes.
Here we have the first comment from Joanna Frinto.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time in reporting and got a lot automated with Gemini. And then we have from Robin Vandenberg, a great exercise to get an overview.
I love it. That's great. That's great. Good to have those discoveries. And the fact that technology can address some of those mismatches is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll give you some ideas of how to address any gaps when you go about doing that exercise on your projects, which is you want to identify the biggest gaps to figure out where the mismatch is most severe, and then do a little bit of a root cause analysis. A lot of these issues might not be the fault of you, the project manager. Is it issues with the organizational culture, or is it habits that you yourself have fallen into? This is how I've always managed projects for 20 years and it's been very successful. I haven't really thought about, team dynamics or some of those other elements. Or is it systemic issues throughout the organization that maybe we can think about, like how we can go about addressing? In terms of figuring out how we want to develop actions for it, what is it that you can control? And what is it that is maybe worth escalating and negotiating with partners and stakeholders? And then ultimately setting a target for how we can improve things over time. Okay. So that's a little bit about matching your values with matching your actions and your time management. I wanted to move into a little bit, kind of a little bit about the role of the board chair and some of the things that I've learned as a result of having that experience. The two key actions for a board chair is we need to be supportive of our organization and we need to be challenging to our organization. It's often that a board chair or a board in general will kind of lean on one or the other, either, hey, you're doing a great job, or hey, you should be doing this better, but you need to always keep those things in balance. Leading up, excuse me, hold on. I've discovered that leading a board is very much like being in a fishbowl. You think that you're just listening to a presentation, but the entire organization is watching your body language to see if you're bored, if you're angry, if you're supportive. You don't know that your silence is being interpreted as disapproval, or your questions are being interpreted as a lack of trust. So some of you may have recognized this feeling in a high visibility project where everyone is watching your every reaction to understand your values. If you're stressed out in the face of a crisis, people are going to notice. When you're leading the organization, every idea that you have is the best idea ever. I learned that if I give my opinion early in the boardroom, everyone would fall in line and agree with my point of view. Brilliant job, boss. Wow, boss, you're the best, boss. Great idea, boss. Let's go. But true leadership isn't about making everyone follow me. That's actually easy. My job as the chair is to help make the board make the best possible decision. And we need to hear the voices of every person in the room to make that happen. I quickly learned that leadership often means speaking last and using that voice to summarize and distill the ideas in the room to the best possible conclusion. The best tool I've found for focusing discussion and getting the best decision is something called framing. Framing is a word that is often misused. It means putting a decision in a particular context, bounding the discussion. People say framing when they just mean teeing up a discussion, or I'm just framing this discussion. No, 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 no. There are very specific steps to framing that if you follow them, they can be very, very powerful. Let me walk through it with you. So when I'm framing an issue, I start with the background. Okay, here's what's going on today. Second step is there's a complication or change. Something has changed, and now we have this problem. Describing that complication or change helps you control the conversation and outcomes. And then we move to asking a question. The question is going to be very specific, and it focuses the team on what we're trying to accomplish. And it defines the boundaries of the discussion. We're talking about this, we're not talking about this. And that ultimately should lead us to an answer. Let me give you an example of framing an action in a boardroom, not my boardroom. So at Apple, we had a situation. The situation was Steve Jobs is now taking his third leave of absence for health reasons. He's not disclosed to the board or to anyone else what his health issues are. We just know he needs to take time off. Tim Cook is taking over operations. So that's the situation. That's the background. So what's the complication or change? The change is this third leave of absence. It's a cause for concern. It's clearly a pattern. And our last leave was really long. So we don't know what's going to happen with this third leave of absence. The organization needs a stable leader. So that's our complication or change. That's the definition of the problem. So what is the question? The question that the board came up with is, what are our alternatives for addressing this issue? We can look at reducing the duties of the CEO, or we can shore up our succession plan. So we can kind of focus the discussion in these particular ways and get us to a stronger answer. So framing and then constantly reframing means that we stay focused on what's most important and make great decisions. I think we've all had the experience in project meetings and many other sessions in our life where the conversation just gets off the rails. And the idea of framing brings everything together to say, okay, let me summarize. Here's what I think I just heard. And to use this framing technique of the background, the complication or change, and the question to get everybody focused and looking at the right things and focused on the right things going forward. Easily the best tool that I've found. So when I was preparing these slides, Microsoft suggested this image to represent the hiring of a new CEO. If you have only one takeaway from this presentation, let it be this. If someone shakes your hand like this, do not hire them. That is the most deranged photo. I'm sure many of you have hired before. The one thing that we all do wrong when we hire, every person has positives and negatives. But often we fail to see the positives and only see the negatives when somebody has moved on and we're trying to replace them. We overcorrect for the things that went wrong, and we take for granted all the things that went right. Have you had this experience? You always see it in a job description, which I always think is really funny. I love to play the game of what was wrong with the last guy. You can see it when, in the end of the job description, it says must be punctual or must have tactful communication. You can see, oh, the last guy really got that wrong. So it's a challenge to not overcorrect for those things. Hiring a new CEO is the most important thing that a board does, but fully a third to one half of new CEOs don't last beyond 18 months. Which is a very short period of time and is a very expensive decision. But it's not because the CEOs aren't qualified most of the time. It's because they don't understand the politics and the culture of the new environment. I was able to be part of bringing on not one, but two new CEOs in the time that I was on the board, and they both massively changed the organization. The first one that I was part of hiring, Sunil Prashara, helped make PMI a global organization for the very first time. He was the right leader for the right moment and really shook up an organization that had been stable for the last few decades in a rapidly changing world. We often treat hiring like a procurement project. But we know that the real work happens after the contract is signed. You know how you can procure a new piece of software, but if you don't integrate it well into the legacy systems, it's going to fail? The exact same thing happens with a new CEO. But it's complicated because we know that the best way to change the culture of an organization is to change the CEO. So you want someone who's going to fit in the culture, but who's also going to change the culture. And how can you get that balance right? This is something you don't really find on a resume. The resume that gives you all the descriptions of what they've done in the past, and you can check their references and you can ask them questions. But how do you know what kind of culture the new CEO will create? And will it be the right one for us, the right one for our organization? We have a very unique community that's really volunteer driven, and that's just really different than a lot of experienced CEOs face. So there's this there's this time that's called the golden period, which is the time between when a CEO is hired and when it's announced and he actually starts his work. So that's kind of a really special time where you're building all the groundwork to make the CEO successful. It's the time between the handshake and the start date. So before all the work starts in a huge flood and all the emails come piling in and all the LinkedIn messages, we need to help get the CEO's feet firmly on the ground so that he's ready to be successful. The most important job of the board, I mentioned, was hiring the CEO. I lied. It's not hiring the CEO. It's helping ensure that the new CEO is successful. So before he started in his new role, I met Pierre in New York, where he lives, and we spent long days together, full days, morning until night, talking about everything from the importance of our community to how decisions are made in the organization, what innovation looks like, where influence lies, what's actually on the org chart versus who really has influence and power in the organization. Where did previous CEOs succeed? And where did they struggle? What are the, giving him my perspective from my, decades of experience with PMI of the things he needs to look out for and the opportunities he has before him. The thing that I'm most proud of as a board director was the work that we did to lay the groundwork for a successful transition. So finally, I wanted to spend a minute talking about what boards actually need from project managers, because I think this is pretty important, and it's been kind of interesting to be on both sides of this. I've always felt that looking at a company, well, actually, before I move forward to that, I wanted to see, are there any other comments or questions that have come out of the chat so far that I should get to before we move on to a new topic? All right, I guess we'll move on to the Swiss cheese. I've always felt that looking at a company when you're on the board is very much like trying to see through the holes of Swiss cheese or Emmentaler. You see some things very clearly, but most of the details you can't see at all. So you're just kind of getting an idea, a blurry vision. It's like you need new glasses. You think you know what's going on in the company and in the larger organization, but you have a very limited view. As a project manager, you can see a lot of details that the board can't see because you're on the ground and you see it every single day. The board is looking at long-term strategy and external threats. They need to know that project managers are looking up from the deliverables to see the signposts on the horizon. So boards need project managers to demonstrate awareness of macro trends, such as whether AI and robotics are going to displace the workforce required for the project's long-term viability, or how climate change impacts the infrastructure being built. So understanding the overall trends, the context around the project that you're executing, helps you make really much better decisions and helps you communicate much better with leadership about the things that are important to them. They also need strategic alignment. It's not enough to check boxes. Boards need to know if the project is delivering outputs, deliverables, or outcomes that maximize project success to elevate our world. The projects that we undertake need to be moving the organization towards the strategy that the board has defined. If you look at the project you're working on and you can't see a close tie to the strategy that the organization has set out for themselves, that might be something that's worth having a conversation to really understand. I spoke a few years ago with a gentleman who was CEO of a bagel company. And he told me that the thing that he worried about more than anything else was the chive schmear, which is kind of a weird word, but it means the cream cheese with onions that that gets spread onto a bagel when a customer orders it. And the reason why he said it was his biggest worry is because if you have regular cream cheese that's gone bad and it's getting moldy, it can look just like good cream cheese that has green onions in it. So that can be a real problem. So what you don't want to make anybody sick, right? So what is your chive schmear? What is that small indicator that looks fine, but might be signaling a systemic health crisis in your project? So what are the things that you need to elevate as possible long-term issues or possible big risks before they become big risks? Also, what a board needs from a project manager is root cause transparency. When a project faces a crisis, the board doesn't want a public relations story. They know that you can't talk your way out of a crisis. They need the project manager to answer the hard question. How have we arranged to have this problem? What is it that we are doing that caused this problem to happen? Not who caused the problem, but like, what is it structurally that we could address as an organization to make sure that this problem doesn't happen again? So how we arrange to have this problem. This shifts the conversation from blaming individuals to fixing systemic incentives or structures. Also, another thing that boards need from project managers is understanding if your culture is eating your strategy. So what's going on with political dynamics? A board needs to know if a major project has the necessary political support to survive, or if it's being undermined by internal rivals. And what about sustainability? If the board has expressed an interest in being environmentally, fiscally, and socially sustainable, but there are direct or indirect implications of the project on those goals, on the community and culture, that's going to be important for the board to understand. And also whistleblowing and integrity. Boards need assurance that the tone at the top of the project encourages transparency. They need to know if the project culture allows for bad news to travel fast, or if there's a culture where management is unresponsive to ethical concerns. I once had a conversation with a CEO where I raised the issue of tone at the top, and he roared, and this was at a board meeting, and he roared at me. It's like, I need to know who is telling you that there's a problem with the way the CEO is running things so that I can fire that person. Well, that was a good illustration that he didn't mean to give of exactly what was wrong with the organization. Is it set up so that bad information can flow forward and good decisions can be made, or is the culture of the organization such that bad news is buried and we hide it? So as some of you know, I just recently was awarded the PMI Fellow Award, which was a very big honor for me. This is actually my favorite photo from the awards ceremony. Little things were not going as planned, which is the life of a project manager, isn't it? Becoming a PMI Fellow it didn't happen for following a straight line, but for always trying to make things better, even though it was never in a straight line. We project managers are the architects of the future, but only if we have the courage to stop managing tasks and to start elevating our world. So I'd like to invite you to aim higher, to be the one who asks the hard questions, to maximize your success, not just for the project, but for the people, and let's elevate our world together. So that's the end of my prepared remarks, and I'd be very, very happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. There is actually one question from Jana Frintu. How can you prove that a project is not sustained politically? In my experience, it is an extremely sensitive topic. For example, I ask for resources and I get the last capable people.
Yeah, I think that that's a problem that many of us have had. It's challenging because I think many of us receive the message, the project that you're working on, it's the most important project of the organization. It's really, really critical. Oh, and here you get, Mike from accounting who nobody wants, and he can be part of your project team. And so you kind of are looking at the mismatch. It's like, is this project really, really important? Or are you telling everyone that their projects are important? So some of the things that you can do, one of the things that I like to do in terms of sustainability is to maybe take aside Mike from accounting and to try to figure out, well, what is it, why is it that this person is maybe not doing the best job that we need him to do? And to see how much of it you can do with coaching directly with the team members that you've been given. And then also, simultaneously to negotiate with with your leadership to see about getting better resources where they're absolutely critical, but knowing that you're never going to get exactly what you want, but you always have to adjust with the team that you have and to try and figure out how can I compensate for the shortcomings that I have on the team with either technology or augmenting other resources or just figuring out other paths forward. I wish I had a really good answer, and it's possible that somebody else in the chat might have some other suggestions as well. But it's definitely a tough one and one that I've dealt with many times myself.
Thank you so much for answering this question. There is another question from Thomas. How are good project managers prepared to talk on a board or CEO role?
It's
take
tough.
on a board role. Yeah.
Go ahead, Thomas.
I misspelled it. Not to talk, I wanted to ask, but to take on the role as a CEO or a board member.
When I remember reading this article about 20 years ago, and I think it was in Harvard Business Review, and it said that only once had a project manager of an organization moved up to become a CEO. And it was like, they just don't think the right way. They don't act the right way. They don't have the right context. So it just, and that one person, I don't recall who he was. I think it was a construction. He was not very successful. So the answer was C, the project managers should never be executives. They just don't have those capabilities. And I think to some extent, it was a little bit true back then. We had been trained very much to keep our heads down and to do the technical work of project managers, but not to necessarily see the strategic context and bring that into our conversation. I think that the job of a project manager is very much constantly learning. So we get to the point where, we become a project manager, we've addressed our first project, we've been successful, we've moved on, we've gotten our PMP, and we just really can't stop there. You end up reading a lot more about what are the things that I don't understand. Many of us will get books on strategic thinking. One of the things that I mentioned briefly in my talk was talking about what are the projects that you want to be working on, and saying that it's possible to work with nonprofits if your current job doesn't really give you the freedom to work on the projects that you really want to work on. And that's been really key for me. I realized I didn't know anything about strategic planning 20 years ago. So I joined the Association for Strategic Planning, and I became a member of their board. And you know what the Association for Strategic Planning is really bad at? They're really bad at project planning and execution. So I was able to bring my experience to them on how to execute better, and I learned a lot from them on how to do strategy better. And so this was a very good give and take relationship that caused me to learn how to do strategic planning at a really, really high level, and allowed me to even end up developing the strategic plan for the state of California. So having those kind of experiences, looking at the gaps and the things that you want to learn, the things that would make you a really good executive, you can look at a job description online or the experience of a CEO that you admire and see, oh, I really would like to have experience in profit and loss. I'd really like to have more finance experience. There's so many ways to get that are beyond just getting assigned a project to do that within your company. There's so many ways that you can get that knowledge and then weave those words and those ways of thinking into how you describe your project. And if you start describing your project in more and more sophisticated ways, in ways that are important to executives, then people are going to see you as more and more of a natural leader, and you'll have a little bit more opportunity to move forward.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. There is another question from Terry Hoffman. Your talk reinforced something I learned the hard way in Germany and Kuwait. Projects fail when they deliver activity instead of change. Framing the problem early is what separates motion from progress. If you had to give one habit every project leader should build to improve framing and decision speed, what would it be?
I would say framing and decision speed are two entirely different things. Framing, in a lot of ways, can make things take a little bit longer, because I can be in a meeting where everybody is like making decision at speed, but they might not be the right decisions. And framing by necessity always means taking a step back and saying, wait, okay, I think this is what I'm hearing. I think this is where we're going. Is this really what we need to be doing here? What's the situation? What's the complication? What's the question we're trying to resolve? And so it means less activity, but it means more thoughtfulness. I'll give kind of an example from my own world in Silicon Valley. One of the things that I've always had fun with, not always fun, is I do work with a lot of startups, little, small companies that are really agile, and they know that they need to deliver really fast. And by the time I get involved with an organization like that, they're used to working at a very fast pace. And then this girl comes in and says, well, hey, are you working on the right things? And they don't necessarily want to stop and plan. They don't even necessarily want to figure out what good looks like. They just want to code and code and code and code. But then they don't realize that they're creating something without ever planning for what they're going to actually have at the end of it. And so they end up with all these things slopped together, which is even worse in the age of AI now. And it's always important to kind of balance that action with the correct amount of planning and project management and strategic planning, so that you're working on the right things.
Thank you so much. And there is another question from Paul Karnovka. What would your recommendation be to bring communication to an executive level from day-to-day technical and rather detailed conversations? Often I get too detailed as I'm involved in low-level project execution.
I think the key thing is, and this came up kind of early in this discussion, we had kind of an offhanded conversation about managing expectations. So I think the most important part of stakeholder communication is understanding what is actually important to the stakeholders that you're talking to. What is it that they care about? If you start talking about like, well, our trajectory of bug fixes is really going up, and we addressed 76 bugs this week as opposed to only 37 the week prior, and their eyes are glazing over. And this is not something that they care about. You need to understand. You need to ask them directly. What is the information you need? How often do you need it? What's the best way for us to do this? Do you want a one-on-one conversation? Do you want a report? Don't assume and just say, I write the best dashboards and they're going to want to see my dashboard. No, find out what it is that they need. Find out take very good note of what language they use. And make sure that you reflect that language in your communications to them so that it's spoken in a very relevant way that really, impacts the things that they care about.
Thank you so much. And somebody raised their hand. I think it's Sandra. Is she still willing to ask the question? No. Okay.
Oh,
that was a mistake. Okay.
That's quite all right.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Any other thoughts that folks have? Any other inspirations, ideas?
While you're thinking, you can also scan the QR code and give us feedback. This is really important for us.
Absolutely.
Okay, so maybe we can wrap it. I will continue now. Here is our table for our next events. Our next event is going to be on 11th February. It's going to be with Dharam Singh. After that, we're going to have on the 26th February another webinar with Ayman Sadek from Egypt. And afterwards, on 11th March, we're going to have AI for PM, for project managers from Oliver Walken, Germany. You can register for these events on the Germany webpage, PMI webpage. And join our mission. This is our lovely local group Darmstadt with Thomas Valenta here and me, Yulia Stefanovska. Of course, we have here Muhammad Rezai, he's from Afghanistan. Tufik Habili, he's remotely in our group, he's from Lebanon, Beirut. Almira Hasanovic from Montenegro, and she's currently living in Butelborn. Maria Robe, she's from Macedonia, but currently lives in Brussels. And yes, if you want to volunteer for a group, here is the link, or contact us on our email if you have any questions. And this is the PDU code for our lovely webinar today. Thank you for attending. This was
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us and for sharing your ideas. Actually, this was the first time I saw you talking like that. And it's because you're really sharing what you experienced and what the main things is. And I hope, and I think so, that everybody who was here on the call gets something out of it. Thank you very much again. And again, when we close the recording, so we will put this thing up to YouTube in our playlist, and you can look at Jennifer again then.
Yes.
Thank you.
There is already a comment from Christopher Banta. Many thanks for the interesting event. Thank you so much from Sandra. Peter, thank you for the interesting presentation. Terry Hoffman, thank you so much. Paul Karnovka, many thanks, very insightful. Robin van der Berg, it was great, thanks. Eldauer, thank you very much. An interesting, honest insight. Sunday Okun Lola, thank you for the presentation. Oh, comments are more. Yasser Nasser, thank you for your efforts. Alexei S, thank you for the great presentation. Marvelous.
I hope it was helpful. And if you end up using any of these ideas in your work, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and let me know. I would love to talk to you about it.
I will send an email. I will send an email to all of our participants with the recording of today's webinar, and also with the PDU code one more time. And of course, with your approval, I will send them your LinkedIn profile. So maybe if somebody is enthusiastic, you can continue with the conversation further.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. More and more comments. Stefan Shevata, thank you. Danke. Have a nice day. Lopez Christian, and not just helpful, also very interesting chat. Thanks.
Thank you.